Pickleball is a sport that has exploded in the recent year. And it's not just the sport, but the injuries have as well. I am seeing so many people come into my physiotherapy practice with injuries sustained during pickleball. I am going to show you today the top 3 injuries that are sustained during pickleball and ways that we can actually decrease the risk of sustaining these injuries. I am an advocate for active living. So if we can get people out and moving around, that's great. But we don't want to be sustaining injuries over and over because that's going to decrease your quality of life later on. My name is Adam, proud father, married to an amazing woman, fitness enthusiast, registered physical therapist. This channel is dedicated to those busy parents trying to figure out how to perform at their best in this crazy game of life. This video is intended for educational purposes only, not to replace medical information. Welcome back to Mobility Mindset, guys. My name is Adam Chang. I am a registered physiotherapist and owner of the Lifted Lifestyle Physio and Coaching. Although pickleball is a tamer sport, tamer than squash, racquetball, and tennis, it still requires some level of athleticism. And we're seeing pretty sedentary people get off the couch, turn off the Netflix, and head to the pickleball court. And the problem is pickleball is so addictive that people want to go multiple times a week. And this is great because if we can gamify any form of exercise, then we can get people out there moving around more. But I don't want to see people coming in for injuries that are going to impact their ability to go to work or decrease their quality of life and their longevity. I am going to go through the top 3 injuries. Number 1, the wrist fracture. Okay, we call this a foosh, fall on outstretched hand. When you're losing your balance and all it takes is a misstep, then you're going to fall flat on your face. You're going to stick your hand out and break your fall. The issue is that if you are a 50, 60-year-old female with low bone density, that's going to result in a nasty fracture. And often that is going to limit your mobility, range of motion, and function of your hand for several weeks, sometimes several months. The research shows that about 32 to 33% of injuries sustained is the fracture of the wrist. Second, sprains and strains, and sometimes even ruptures. We're talking about soft tissues. We're talking about muscles, ligaments, tendons. Ligaments attach bone to bone and they allow for stability in a joint. The tendons attach muscle to bone and it anchors the muscle to the bone to allow for movement and also stability. We're finding that people are sustaining sprains and strains often because they are too weak to manage their body. Doing a running sport where you're changing directions and cutting, every time you land on one foot, it's 3 times your body weight. So if you don't have the strength to slow your body in motion down and then change direction, you will often lead to some type of tear of a tissue. It's when the load exceeds the tensile strength of the tissue. So if we're having some muscle imbalances, some muscles haven't been used enough, we're going to get compensation in other areas. And this leads us to our 3rd most common injury, which is a tendonitis. Tendonitis of the elbow, probably the most common. We call this either tennis elbow or golfer's elbow. I think we're going to have to start calling this pickleball elbow. When your recovery isn't adequate, you haven't been sleeping enough, you haven't been eating the right stuff, you haven't been hydrating, and you're getting to the court so often because you are addicted to that sport, you're going to create a repetitive strain injury, which causes inflammation at the tendon. And that can actually become chronic. Even though this is a tamer sport, there are still some mobility, stability, strength, and agility requirements for you to perform the sport and perform it well and safe. I have a framework of how we can break this down and improve athleticism. And it starts with a stability progression. So the ability for you to maintain the position of a joint. We start with a static stability demand, and then we move towards what we call a dynamic stability demand. So can we maintain the position of the joint while we are in a static position, like just standing on one leg? And then can we maintain the position of your joints while we are moving and we have different forces acting on our bodies, like reaching out, trying to touch our toes on one leg, and reaching our leg out to the side in different directions. Then we also have a strength to power progression. Can we activate muscles that are key strength areas that we need for that specific sport? Can we just activate it? And then can we move a joint through what we call concentric and eccentric movements against resistance? Then can we do that with speed? Can we do what we call plyometrics? So jumping from side to side, hopping forward and back. Can we transfer our weight and move with speed and agility? Lastly, do we have the mobility? Can we have adequate mobility around a joint? And can we move with coordination? There's one thing to have flexibility, but in order to have good mobility, we need flexibility and stability. So it's not just about stretching tissues, stretching your muscles, making sure your hamstrings can lengthen. It's about actually owning the movement, being able to breathe in a stretched position. Can we contract the muscle, or can we provide force in a stretch position? Sports require all of this. I know you don't have a lot of time and you just want to play a game, but in order to play the game, you have to be ready for it. Like any athlete, they train so that they can perform the sport and they can perform it safely. So I'm going to give you a 20-minute routine that goes through this entire framework that you can do in the comfort of your home, your gym. All you need is just some space to move around. So let's go to the gym and I'll show you exactly how to do that. This simple 20-minute primer for pickleball is split up into 3 blocks. The first block being a stability progression. So we're starting with a static balance, which is fairly simple. All we want to do is stand on one leg. Now, if you stand on that leg and you are shifting your body weight and you can't get stable, your foot is moving, you're feeling the muscles in your leg and your foot really working to keep you balanced, then this is basically where you're going to stay for now. And you want to make sure that you can get to the point where you can hold this for 30 seconds, no problem. Now, if this is easy for you, we can do a simple adjustment by closing our eyes. This is going to take away the sensory information that comes into your eyes, and you're going to rely more on what it feels like inside your body. And this is very important. So you're going to close your eyes and try to hold for 30 seconds. Now, this is harder than it looks. Now, if that becomes easy, what I'm going to get you to do is put a foam pad or a cushion under your foot, and this will challenge you even more. Now, another progression, and one that's very important, especially in sport, is changing your focus. So looking from left to right, up and down, because often we have to follow something. And in pickleball, we're going to be following the ball and the position of our opponents. So we go on one leg, then we just turn our head side to side, and up and down. Now, when that becomes easy, we can get a lot more dynamic. First, we're going to try a single leg toe touch. So what we're doing is shifting our center of mass forward, hinging at our hip and touching our toes. We could even do a little leg reach, toe tap. We're not getting really deep into a squat, but yes, we are bending our knees, so we're having to stay balanced while moving our center of mass downward. Now, we can also get a lot more dynamic once this becomes easier. This is a moving sport, so we got to get moving. We can do what we call a plyometric. This is what we call a ballistic movement. So it's pretty simple. It's almost like playing hopscotch. So all we're going to do first is hop forward and back and side to side on two legs. If you notice, I'm keeping my center of mass, which is basically around here, within this base of support. So if I drew a circle around my body, my center of mass is staying here, but I'm contacting the floor outside of that circle. You could even, if you work off of visuals, you could even draw a circle yourself and jump out of it, in and out. So when that becomes easy, you can move on to a single leg hop. Same exact thing, but we're using one leg. So a lot harder. Then we can go on a diagonal. So we want to do this entire block for about 5 minutes. So if we're breaking it down, everyone's going to be different. 30 seconds per exercise. Now let's move on to block number 2, which is a strength to power progression. Now we're on to our second block, which is a strength to power progression. But before we can start strengthening these muscles, we want to make sure that one of the main muscles is activated. We call this glute activation. Your glute muscle is so important for stabilizing, steadying your pelvis while you're on one leg, especially when you're jumping around, running around, shifting your body weight. It helps your femur or your leg bone from dipping in and straining the tissues in your knee. So we're going to start with either a hip circle or a mini band, and we're going to put it around our thighs just above the knee, and we're going to do some bridges. So in this position here, we want our feet just about shoulder width apart. We want to make sure that our knees are opening, hands by the side, and then you're going to drive through your feet, lifting your hips and your pelvis up. Make sure that you do enough so that you feel a nice burn in the buttock muscles, and only stop when your technique starts to break down because you're getting really tired. This is how we can progressively overload. This next exercise is the split squat. I love this exercise because when we play sports, especially a running sport, we're often in a split stance. And if we can strengthen our muscles in this position, lowering our body weight slowly, hinging at the hip, getting our knees over the toes, we can really establish some strength with this very functional and very relevant movement. So we can start without a weight, and then we could eventually add a weight. So if I'm working my right leg, we want that right leg in front of the left leg. And all we're going to do here is go into a squat. So if you notice, my hip is hinging while my knee bends. We can change the focus of the muscles, making it either glute dominant or quad dominant based on just the position of our trunk. So if I want more of a knee dominant movement or a quad dominant movement, I'm going to shoot my knee forward and keep my trunk relatively upright. So for this one, you'll feel a nice burn right at the front of the quad. Then, if we want to shift it to the glutes and the hamstrings a bit more, then we're going to take a little more of a hinge where we drop our hip deep into the back. And it's almost as if I'm bringing my rib cage towards my thighs. Okay, now if I want to add a weight, I can hold it in my opposite arm, which makes it a lot more challenging because that weight is going to want to shift my body away from the stance leg or away from the leg that I'm training, which forces the muscles on the outer side and the back of my leg to really work to keep the position of my pelvis. It's kind of brutal, especially if you are somewhat weak and you're getting tired, but really try to slow the descent. So really slow the movement of your body going down and then try to speed up on the way up. Call it 2 to 3 seconds down, 1 second up. This is a way to really progress from strength to power. For these next 2 exercises, we are now entering the ballistic realm, which means we're just going to be throwing our body weight around and changing direction, moving front to back, and trying to maintain good stability. But we can do this as a progression of that split squat, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do this. I'm going to start with the split squat, and then we're also going to do a skater jump. So for the dynamic lunge or dynamic split squat, we're going to jump forward from our back leg to our front leg. We're going to absorb the shock on the front leg using those same muscles that we were training before in the previous exercise and really push off back to our starting position. So think of it as like a coil, a spring that you are compressing. You're gathering that power and pushing back off. This is amazing for warming up before you play. Then the skater jump. It's a little more challenging because it requires a lot more stability in your hips. For this one, you want to make sure that your knee is not caving in. So ensuring that you're keeping everything nice and stable. If you can't, then you got to back up a little bit, slow it down, and take smaller jumps. We can then progress this to a jumping hip airplane. As you can see, pretty tough. Now moving on to our third block, which is our mobility block. Now we can take it a little easier Often when I do a workout like this, I will split the mobility block in half, put a half of it at the front and then a half of it at the back of the workout, sandwiching your workout with mobility. Okay? So this first exercise is called the combat stretch. What we're doing is we are folding at the ankle. What we are doing is folding at the ankle, the knee, and the hip. This is great for hip dorsiflexion, knee flexion range of motion, even hip flexion range of motion. But here's the bonus, you're getting some hip extension in the back leg. So we're getting some mobility in both legs. What you'll notice is anytime I'm doing a lower body mobility work, it's not just one leg we're working on. We're getting something out of the other leg as well. Time efficient. So here we're gonna put our front leg up on a box. So already, as you can see, my hip is in flexion, and we are going to bend at the ankle and the knee. So we're absolutely folding over on the knee and the ankle. But my back leg behind me is getting some good hip extension. Now, if we wanted even more knee flexion, we can drop our knees further over our toes by getting up on our toes. When I do the combat stretch, I like to actually move in and out of that position. So this next one is very important for any type of racket sport because you will have to rotate your shoulders quite a bit. So we want to make sure that our upper back and mid back can rotate. We call this our thoracic spine. Our thoracic spine needs to rotate. So we can do this in a seated position, and then we can do it on the floor. And I'll show you that progression afterwards. So if we're doing it seated, we also have an opportunity to really get the upper back moving. And I call this one the thoracic whip. So you want to think of a punching bag behind you, and you're going to whack it with your elbows by rotating and spinning. It's important to note that you should build up speed and momentum. We don't want to be just, first and second rep really whipping around because you could potentially hurt yourself. So gradually build up the speed. Cracks and pops are welcome. You will feel some cavitations, and that's okay. We're really loosening up that area of your upper back. Another variation of a thoracic rotation and also extension, so it's getting rotation and extension, is the lumbar locked thoracic rotation. We're going to get into a ball, feet together, knees together, elbows tucked into the knees. We're gonna have one hand either behind the head or behind the back, and we're gonna rotate up. Think of being in a whiskey barrel. You can't move your body out of it. All you can do is spin. Now, the last two movements are for your hip and lower back. We call this a 90-90 progression. So it's a hip switch, windshield wiper type movement. We're gonna drop one knee. Well, technically we're dropping both knees. One leg, one hip is going internal, the other hip is going external. your sits bones, the bones in your buttock, the bones that you sit on. You want to rock from one to the next, but try not to shift your pelvis out. So we're keeping that same position of the pelvis. This requires what we call a movement dissociation. So we want to keep our lower back and our pelvis stable while we shift our hips in and out. Then we can move to a complete 90-90 where we are changing the position of our shoulders along with our hips. Now, we can do this with our hands supporting us behind and then progress to a hands-free movement, which takes a little more control of your core, stabilizing your pelvis and your hips. Now, when you're doing this one, you're gonna notice that one hip and one direction of movement is probably gonna be more stiff than the other, and that is absolutely normal. The goal is to work on it so that you can eventually feel the same in both hips. We can add a trunk lean to really get the back of that hip as well. So we're gonna lean our trunk and our chest towards the leg that is being stretched. And then we want to push off with that leg as we transition to the other side. Like that. The last one you really want to do before and after you play pickleball. You're going to be flat on your stomach, and we're basically going to do like a cobra stretch, or we also call these prone extensions. So you're on your stomach and you're doing a sloppy push-up like movement. And this is to protect your lower back, because often, or too often, we can get these disc herniations because we are bending too much and rotating too much. When you get to the top, exhale, sag your back, and then come back down. So this is your 20-minute pickleball primer. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, hit the like button, obviously. Subscribe to the channel, and please share this with any of your pickleball friends who are getting injured or may not want to get injured. Enjoy. See you next time.